Cybertruck mirror. If at first you don't succeed, just keep trying.
So third time's a charm. At least that's what I'm hoping. This is now the third different media rearview mirror I'm going to be putting into the truck, and I'll give you the reasons why. And at the end of the video, we'll find out, is this actually the charm? Or am I still looking? I just installed for the third time a media rearview mirror here in my Cybertruck, this one again from Hansshow. So this first one I got here from Hansshow was great. It was a total game changer, and if you're familiar at all with the Cybertruck, you know it came with this dinky little rearview mirror, and you couldn't even see out the back of the window if your cover was closed, and if it was down, it's a tiny little gap. It was just kind of a flaw. Now Cybertruck put a little camera on your front screen all the time. That's nice, but still it was just the habit of always just looking up here and not having to look down. Not a big deal. But still, I just knew there had to be better options out there. Especially since this is something that many cheap cars, and especially nice cars like this Land Rover here, have been doing for years now, which is putting in this little digital media camera. It's hard to believe Tesla didn't put this in from the beginning. Well, this digital mirror that I got from Hansshow solved all those problems and was great, but, and there's a but, it was flawed. It had a decent picture, very comparable to what Tesla had on its screen, but its biggest thing was it didn't shut off when you left. I would walk away from my vehicle, shut the door, and look back, and I could still see this mirror glowing in the truck. Now, this truck draws enough tension as it is. I'm not looking to draw more attention to it, especially when I'm not there. I felt like this was just a beacon for the vandals out there. So even though this was bigger and it really solved all the problems that I had, it still left a little bit to be desired. And then eventually another solution came along. Another supplier out there started making this camera here. It was actually almost a full inch bigger than the Hansshow model, which I really liked. It also came with a little SD card. It was great. So this eventually would replace the original one that I got from Hansshow. But then again, this one also had a flaw. In fact, this flaw might have been greater than the previous flaw. When I first put it in, it was great, but then an update happened to the truck. And after that update, I started getting a warning on my screen that basically told me much of my auxiliary sound wasn't gonna work. That included plating sound out loud, like on the boombox in the truck, but also different horn features of the truck. None of those were a huge deal, but still, it was taking away features from my truck, and I always had this little green and white error code on my screen. So while both of these little cameras worked and were innovative, they caused problems and they weren't quite the solution. So when Hansshow reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we've got a 2.0 version of our original, and we would love you to try it out and tell us what you think. I put it in, I have tried it out. So that's what today's video is. It'll be a brief walkthrough, not the complete step-by-step of what I've done in the previous videos. And if you want to see those, I'll go ahead and link those down in the description below. And with this being my actual third different install, will this actually be the charm it's billed to be?
Let me start you here with the unboxing. Just as everything I've ever gotten from Hansshow, it always comes really well packaged and separated out.
So throughout this video, and especially a little bit more towards the end, I'll compare all through these. The Generation 1, the Generation 2, as well as the S92 screen, again, that I got from another supplier.
So now on to this process that I've become all too familiar with. The first step in this, you have to remove that rearview mirror. It just has one screw right up the middle. Then I remove this little center console, as well as the little shifting supply up top. Once I had those two things out, I went ahead and undid all the wires from the previous cameras, and then went ahead and popped loose this little felt cover along the top of the ceiling because I had a bunch of cords run in back through here. Because I was going to have to undo the previous camera first before I could obviously set up the new one.
So the first difference I noticed right away was, of course, the size. I'll get back to that in a minute. But if you notice, I have 3 cords here in the original, and I just have 2 here on the 2.0, the newer one. Some of the big problems I had installing the first, and what a lot of people had, including many of you that give me your feedback, was that there was so much going on inside this upper little console up here that it was causing all kinds of problems. I even had problems with my GPS. I had to move around, make sure I didn't cover up any of those sensors. There's a fan in there I messed up once. I'm thinking these 2 wires instead of the 3 is going to be very helpful. To make sure I avoid the mistake that happened to me the previous time, is I don't want to cover anywhere in the silver area. If I'm running any cord across this, it'll interfere with my GPS sensor up front, and then my GPS won't work. So keeping this section totally clear. Now you can see here, it does split off. So that's really how you're saving that 3rd cord. So I'm going to leave enough out here where eventually I'm going to connect the camera.
The next step was to remove the front-facing camera from the previous media mirror.
So just to show you the differences in the 2 front cameras. So here's the original. This is the first time pulling it down. My new one is going to look like this. So I don't know about the quality difference yet. I'll let you know when I get it installed. But the difference is here, your cord's permanently attached, whereas here it's not. You're going to connect it, again, to the little cord I just put in earlier. It's going to click on right here. Okay, so now we're left with 2 different cords. The one with all the little colors on it is going to go down below, which we'll get into that in a minute. Then you have this other one, which is basically just an extension cable. Both of these ends are the same. One of them is going to plug into the end that's on your actual camera, and one's going to run to the back of the truck to hook to the camera. That's going to be your rear view from the backside. But both of these cables are going to have to get run from up here across this little section on the top, which I pulled out earlier. Now, one of them is going to run down this little A pillar here into the base, and the other one, of course, is going to run to the back where we're going to hook to our camera.
So I'm going to go ahead and string these 2 wires across this little section. Again, I pulled this down more than what I think a lot of people do, and that made it a lot easier. So as I'm fishing this new cable in all the way down, I'm removing the old one. Again, you can just tuck it back in here behind this felt all the way down. Use that little trim tool to kind of tuck it in here around the corner. This little end cap of the dash comes off if your door is open. Then eventually you open up this dash compartment all the way down to the floorboard and pull back this little section to expose where you're going to actually plug in the brains of your unit. Again, I'll kind of walk this through a bit more here in a minute, but once you unplug this, you can connect your new camera.
Next, I have the little harness that looks like this. Now, this is going to go up into the dash of the car. Now, I already have multiple things plugged into this, including that C9 screen, which is that little 9-inch screen above my steering wheel. Now, this part here is actually going to be the power supply. So this right here is going to be one of the main differences between the original and this generation 2. So this little harness here is what's going to hook up to the controls of the truck, and this is what's going to allow it when you walk away and shut your door for that camera to shut down, and when you come back and reopen the door, it's going to open back up. This section here is where it's been getting its power. It was getting its power supply before from underneath that little mirror cover up there in the top, which led to a real jumbled mess, which made it more complicated. And we have this little wire here, which is going to connect to this little wire here with a little multicolor. This is going to connect into this. This whole little thing here with the power supply is what we just ran up the A-pillar across the front of the truck, all down into the mirror. So that's what's saving us that wire, is that it's doing all of its T and connections right here.
So back underneath the dash, I'm going to unhook that little brain of the computer. Now again, I have multiple other things, including that screen I mentioned earlier plugged in here. It just tees off. That part was really simple. Here is the power supply. Again, I have a whole bunch of other things included in here. You have that little open square. That's always where the little latch goes. That kind of helps me to remember, so I'm not going back and forth. But once you get your power supply here, then it's just a matter of jamming all these little cords back in this little void of the dash. And lastly, this little multicolor cord, and then same thing as before. I tucked all this back in the side dash underneath this little lip, all back to where it was safe, so it wouldn't be a problem in the future. Once I had all of this pushed back into place, then I went ahead and snapped all this little plastic housing back in. It was a little tricky to get it, all the little insulation pushed back in, as well as all the little weather rubber stripping pushed around. But once you got it, looks good as new. Then you push this little end of the dash back on as well. And then I was back on the task of running that wire to the back of the truck for the rear camera. Now that little cream thing you see here, after I removed the weather stripping, is the airbag. It's important that you fish this wire underneath that airbag, at least in my opinion. You wouldn't want to run that wire across the front of it. Then if you were to get in an accident and it comes out, it'll be hindered by that cord. So I ran it over it. Here's a little thing I did is I drilled a hole actually in the frame of the truck, as you can see here. I showed this on a previous video. Again, I'll link that in the description. And I actually ran the cable through this hole. Now you could run it just underneath the trim. It'll hide behind the weather stripping, but I thought this was the best. It was kind of a pain, but it worked out. Again, I was removing the old cable while I was fishing the new one along to this back of the back door.
Here's where we're at a little bit of a crossroads as far as where we're going to run the camera. Previously, both times, the original Hansshow and the S92 that I put in, I think the best way is to put it on top of the license plate. But for the sake of the video being different, today I'm going to go ahead and put it here on the top back of the truck. I've had a dozen, maybe a couple dozen people reach out and say, hey, you should put it back here. For a lot of reasons, I think on the back, on top of the license plate is the best. But for today's video, we're going to go ahead and install this in the back. Now, there are some benefits of putting it here up top. The first of which is this camera is now shaped in that vein of the Cybertruck. So it has that Cybertruck feel to it, whereas the last one was just a little bit black. Previously, I ran this cord all the way down the side here, underneath the little trim. I popped out this rail, brought it over the top, and then I kind of fished it through underneath the back and around here to on top of the plate. If we're not gonna do that today, then I'm gonna do things a little bit different. And I'm gonna go ahead from this angle right here where I have it, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull back this little can trail, my not yet recalled can trail, and slide this up back through here. We're gonna fish it along the top.
So my can trail was a little bit loose, no shock to anyone. I was able to slide this wire pretty easily up behind that. And then I just used the little included trim tool to tuck this wire in all the way to the middle. Now I did have some extra slack, so I decided to work my way backwards. I put the end of the wire right where it would be and then tucked all the little bit of extra over here in between the side of the truck and the stainless. That actually worked really well. Then I went ahead and tucked off all the excess, including the little joint, in the best that I could. And then replaced all of my doors weather stripping. Okay, so now I've got the cords run, for the most part, up through here. I feel like I've got just about enough slack to get me down to the camera. So before I go ahead and snap this up, I'm gonna try to fish the new mirror down in between. So this is gonna set like this. So I'm gonna start fishing this cord back through the center hole here first.
like so. And I've learned from experience installing these a couple times, I want to get this as tight as possible before I snap it into place, because once I snap it into place, it's kind of stuck where it's at. So if I leave a bunch of extra and snap it in here like this, it's going to be dangling, which obviously we don't want that. So it fits just as much into possible as before. And actually on a previous video I showed, I actually rounded out a little bit of this because it's not going to see as it's going to go up into place, and it's all going to be covered. So that actually gave me a little bit more play to kind of work with here. Okay, so I'm actually going to go off script a little bit here. So normally when I do one of these installs, I kind of walk through and I figure it out for myself. And then once I know exactly what I'm doing, I show you, the viewer, okay, here's what I did. So I'm going to do it a little bit different this time. So I've actually already at this exact moment completed the install. It's in my truck and it's working. But I'm going to go back and actually kind of show you the steps of how I got to where it is now. So I'm convinced how I have it installed right now is the best possible way you could ever do it. But I actually tried it a couple different ways and I had some struggles. So I'm actually going to let you see kind of like behind the curtain today of some of those struggles that I went through and let you kind of see what it looks like. Because I think sometimes I've got the complaint from you all, I make it look easier than it actually is. And a lot of times that's because you didn't see my struggle. And I hope you can appreciate that I'm being just really genuine, just letting you see all of what kind of went through, what my process was to get to where the finished product is now. So in the original install, I did all my connections here inside of this. You could do that if you'd like, or you can try to get them out in between. And I'm actually going to run them on the side of where this is going to sit over here. I'm actually going to run it here on the back side, so you're not going to be able to see the wires.
So what I didn't show us earlier is I took this little whole shroud and that little shifting column down, which made it a little bit easier for me to get around. The downside is I have to clip all the wires back together now that I'm done. So once I put those into place, then it's a matter of just finding the little wires and connecting them together. This all was super simple. In fact, one of them has a little red tip. Obviously, it goes to the other one with the red tip. Once I have those in place, I just kind of clip it all back up in here, and it clicks into these little sections on the windshield. Once that's into place, I have to figure out what to do with all this extra wire. Now, that little step that I did right there in the video looks easy, but it's not. It's a little tricky. So once I get that into place, I tighten that little T20 screw back up into place, which is really the only thing that holds the mirror to the top. Now I have all these extra wires. So as I'm conjoining all the wires together, I'm starting to realize I'm going to have a problem. I have way too much extra wire and I don't really know what to do with it. I just wanted two little thin wires. I'm going to have to do something different. Now, I was still thinking I might be able to hide these wires somewhere in here, so now I've just really snugged this down good. So now it's a matter of putting this little shifting column back up. So again, push that little wire into place, slide it back in. It's all a little tricky, but manageable. So as I get this all kind of tucked back in, I have all this extra wire, which I don't like, which later I'll come back and fix. But right now, I'm just kind of honing in this front camera. I get it kind of in the middle before I actually think of where I'm going to fasten it to the car. But now I have a new problem. And this isn't a huge problem, but the thing is, this particular camera, the actual lens sits so far out to the right, since it's a wide camera, I'm not looking down through the center of the truck. And that bothered me. So what I'm doing here is actually trying to slide this down over to the other side, which will now hopefully line the lens of the camera up right down the center of the truck. But then, of course, I had to move the radar detector. I'm sliding all the cameras around, trying to get them to work. This was kind of a pain that I wasn't expecting, but really, this was manageable too. But then I was left with this ugly wires that I just couldn't leave like this. So it meant taking the mirror back down. So again, backing that screw out. Now, I didn't have to completely remove everything, but I did have to take it down enough to where I could kind of slip all these wires back in. So I tried to have all the connections on the outside of this shroud before, but now I just realized I need to have them all on the inside. So I got them all in, tightened the mirror back down, and it actually did look a lot better with just these two little wires, which is how I originally planned it. Now I'm happy. Another difference to this Generation 2 model was the back of the mirror came off. So this little piece that came off allowed more straight-on access to this screw to be able to put the mirror back up in place. The Generation 1 didn't have this, which made it really hard to get the angle right to fit your screwdriver up into place to put the screw on. It made this whole thing quite a bit more difficult to put on. And quite frankly, it made this whole process 10 times easier to take off and on, which in my case I had to do a couple times. And there she is, the 2.0 in all of her glory. So here I'll demonstrate the main part of this upgrade. So as you can see there, my camera's on, my door is open. So as I shut it and kind of zoom in there, you'll see it eventually will go off.
Now when I open it, it does take a second longer than what I would expect for whatever reason. So you'll see there, the car screen's back on, my C9 screen starting up. My camera will come on, but it's gonna take a second. You just see that reflection of my seat there. There you go, and now it's on.
And that's really the main difference and the purpose of this whole upgrade.
So before I show you driving, here it is totally installed. there's the front-facing camera. And for what it's worth, this is an 11.2-inch screen, a full 3 inches bigger than the original. Very similar to the others. You can touch it and look at it. You can still have a little split screen to show you what's happening on the back, what's happening in the front, or you can look at just the back or just the front. Several different options you can have. And just like before, you can scroll and see up and down of these pictures. As I mentioned earlier in the video, kind of helps the placement. You can really see the whole gamut. Again, kind of a cool little feature. Not sure how often I'm going to use all that, but it's nice to at least know it's out there. And again, the rear, you can go up and down. Again, I talked about this earlier, but I can now see things in my truck bed, and I can see all the way up high views to my truck, or basically seeing what's happening behind me.
Here's the camera driving down the road. Again, this gigantic crystal clear image. Now, if you'll notice, compare it to the picture on the screen below, which is from the camera on the tailgate. The tailgate one is a little bit blurry because of the rain outside, whereas the one on top of the bed, the Hansshow one, doesn't seem to be affected. A huge plus that I wasn't considering.
So in recap, is this third one really the charm over these two? Well, it's probably still a little bit early to tell, but I'm honestly thinking it's it. It works really well. It does everything the first 2 generations do as far as let me see in front of me and behind me. By the way, you're going to want to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I'm thinking of some ideas where I can relocate this front camera and how it's possible now where these would have been much trickier too. All the pluses from the previous ones and none of the negatives that I've seen yet so far. It shuts off when I walk away and comes back on when I come back. And as far as mounting this rear camera up here on the top of the truck, just ahead of the tonneau cover, as compared to how I had it before on top of the license plate, actually has some benefit. Not only can I see what's coming behind me on the road, at least for the most part, I can now see what's down into my bed, which will be actually really helpful in times that I'm transporting cargo that I want to see. But one of my plans for that future video I teased a second ago, I'm going to see if there's a way I can mount that maybe front-facing camera on a future video actually inside the bed. So if my cover's shut, I can actually see my cargo and keep an eye on it while I'm traveling. Because many times I've wanted to watch what's in the back just to make sure it was safe, things like that. We'll see. Let me know if you have a better idea of where that second camera should go. But at the moment, I'm loving where this one is. And I have noticed for the couple days now that's been in driving around, it doesn't seem to get wet and take on street rain and water and splash up like the one down by the license plate did. And even comparing that camera to the front OEM camera on the actual truck, as well as the back one here that sits on the bottom of the tailgate, I still have those. Those are still there. These are just other options. So oftentimes I found myself comparing the two. And this one here in the truck seems to collect rainwater and get dust and dirt on it a whole lot easier than the other one. Now, I have put this little washing fluid. So if you haven't seen that video, I installed that a few months back now that lets me spray windshield washer fluid from the front, which does clean this one. If I do determine over time that I like this one here and want to leave it, I may try to figure out a way that I could actually run the washer fluid back there also. So when I hit my little windshield washer fluid button, it actually sprays some fluid up there as well. Who knows? Another reason you're going to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already though. So as always, with my continued partnership with Hansshow, if you use my channel name CARisma, you can get a discount off anything on their site, including this rearview mirror here, digital camera, which again, I think might be the charm after 3 times. Go ahead and jump on the site today, pick something up, use my channel name. It'll give you a significant discount, sometimes 18, sometimes 20, sometimes even a better percentage off. And in addition, they actually give me a small kickback of 1 or 2%. Anything I make on this, I just throw right back into the truck to add more accessories to make more videos. So I'd love if you can help support the channel. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know down in the comments below, where else should I put a camera on the truck and what kind of problems you have? And do you think this camera solves those problems? See you on the next one.